What's up, everybody? On today's show, big news out of LSU as quarterback Myles Brennan steps away from football, leaving the quarterback battle there down to Jayden Daniels versus Garrett Nussmeier. We'll talk all about it with Carter Bryant. Also, we'll start our team previews going around the conference as we get into previewing the rest of the SEC. And hey, why not? If we're talking LSU, let's continue talking LSU with former LSU offensive lineman T-Bob Hebert. And also the AP Preseason Poll is out. We'll touch on the teams making the rankings. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. Remember, Locked On SEC is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube and at lockedonsec.com. All right, normally in our first segment, we go around the conference and check in on all the news going on around the conference. And the big story of the last 24 hours coming out of Baton Rouge as LSU having an interesting issue with one of their quarterbacks that was in the quarterback battle. A lot of people thought was going to be the starter, Myles Brennan, steps away from football. So nobody better to get in than our buddy Carter Bryant, host of the LSU Power Hour. He jumps in now. Carter, what's going on, man?
Life is grand, Gordy. And, Myles Brennan's career ends opposite that of Stetson Bennett's, right? The latter national championship winning. I low-key think Stetson has some very tasty Heisman odds at like plus 12,500. And I know like a lot of people we're expecting Myles to go back to his early 2020 form, right? And Gordy, you've covered this. You and I probably did a segment on it at the time. We're doing it now. Those 3 games Myles had, he put up some big numbers. Wasn't the most flawless performances, but, Myles Brennan was LSU, right? With his connections throughout Louisiana, even though he played high school football in Mississippi. This is, I was about to say, normally with college athletes, Gordy, we're like, this is a young man, but in the terms of college football, this is an older player from the Les Miles regime, Gordy. You know Les better than I do. It's crazy to think that Myles Brennan was an Ed Orgeron, recruit just in theory, but when he signed in 2017, of course, he was a Les Miles, recruit, right? And it's just nuts to think that Les was recruiting him, and then, he goes through this Orgeron regime. Brian Kelly calls him on the phone and says, we want you to come back and compete. Myles decides to compete. And before, I know we're semi-close, but before we even get to the season, Myles decides to hang it up.
Yeah, it is crazy. I'll give a hat tip to Charles Hannegriff. Was listening to his podcast, covers LSU, and I think he said when Myles Brennan committed to LSU, Peyton Manning had just announced his retirement from the NFL. Peyton Manning is now enshrined in the Hall of Fame. So just to give you an idea of how long it's been since Myles Brennan started his college career. But let's start here, Carter. We see the statement come out from Brian Kelly on Monday afternoon saying we're grateful to Myles for everything he's done for LSU football. Great leader. He's made a tremendous impact on this program. And then we saw later in the afternoon, Myles Brennan releases his statement to the fans, saying Tiger Nation, the last few years have been great, been a great run, tremendous support, and all this kind of stuff. I want to start here, Carter, at least from what we understand and from what we've heard. It seems like this was an absolute open competition. Brian Kelly never guaranteed Myles Brennan anything. Said, look, I know you're going in the transfer portal, new coach coming in, I get it, but look, we're going to give you every opportunity to earn this job. It was a little precarious a few weeks later when we see Arizona State quarterback Jayden Daniels could have went anywhere in the country, and he chose LSU. On top of it, LSU had Garrett Nussmeier, who played a little bit last year, and, I know a lot of people are very high on. So 3 good candidates coming in, but it seems like sometime over the weekend or sometime in the last couple of days, Myles Brennan was informed he must have been 3rd string, because I got to think even if he was 2nd string, he still was going to stick this thing out and that sort of thing. But if you're 3rd string as a 6th-year senior, man, it feels like you don't have much opportunity to be able to get onto the field.
Yeah, and I know a lot of your listeners, Gordy, are golf guys and gals. Well, LSU's team went top golfing the over the past weekend, and Miles was with the team top golfing. So knowing how expensive that's gotten, that was actually pretty clever timing from Miles to get a few swings in before he decided to leave. But yeah, look, this was one of the most fascinating careers in LSU history, right? This was a guy who, of course, got hurt and had the most unique rib injury in the history of college football. There were surgeons that said, we've never seen anybody do what he did to his body after that Missouri game. And then this past offseason, the off the field incident that allegedly involved, a flip flop getting caught in a fishing dock is truly insane. And Miles would have played a lot, and he definitely would have played over Max Johnson after Max's struggles, even if Max would have started versus UCLA. So you do feel bad for Myles Brennan to a certain extent. And honestly, just in practices, Gordy, Nuss and Jayden Daniels, even in the public viewing and sometimes even in the private viewing, Miles just rarely was working with the first team. So it seems as if that there was some distance between him, Garrett Nussmeier, and Jayden Daniels. And that's the bottom line. Sometimes these quarterback battles are tough. Now, what I will do, Gordy, is, defend Brian Kelly here. And you know me, Gordy, I'm a big LSU fan. Obviously, you do the Power Hour LSU thing. There's some things, though, that you have to be critical about coaches of. I don't understand the criticisms of Brian Kelly in this certain situation, because obviously the same day that Myles Brennan decides to step away from football, we see the story coming out of USF that Jerry Bohannon won the starting job. And a lot of people gave Dave Aranda a lot of credit, telling Bohannon, hey, you're not going to be the guy. You should transfer and see if you can, or think about transferring and see if you can find another place where you can start. And Dave Aranda deserves a lot of credit about that. And some people will use an equivalency here that Brian Kelly should have never recruited Myles Brennan back to the team. And that's simply not true, because Brian Kelly didn't know for sure if any quarterback was going to come from the portal and join a quarterback room that featured 3 former 4-star quarterbacks and one like Myles Brennan. The truth is Jayden Daniels and Garrett Nussmeier just outplayed Myles, and whether or not they outplayed them, it started to show that Brian Kelly and Mike Denbrock favored Garrett Nussmeier and Jayden Daniels over Myles Brennan. Myles had the opportunity here, and it just didn't work out. So, there will be times I will criticize Brian Kelly and the coaches, but here's just not one of them. I just think Myles, it didn't work out, and, sometimes it's just as simple as that.
And we wish him the best of luck. We appreciate it.
Right.
He joined us on the show back in January and talked about his decision when he took his name out of the transfer portal and decided to stay at LSU, and was a great guest. And I encourage anybody who missed that interview, go back and listen to it. Great kid. We wish him the best of luck in life. Turning the page, Carter, we're now down to a 2-horse race. As soon as I heard a few weeks ago that Jayden Daniels was taking some first-team snaps, I started digging deeper into the numbers. And I started to find something that I think kind of hinted towards Jayden Daniels being the leader in the clubhouse. And here's what I found. Mike Denbrock, last 4 seasons at Cincinnati as the offensive coordinator, had Desmond Ridder, who loves to run the football, ran the football a lot as a runner. I think 6 or 7 games last year at Cincinnati, he had games where he had 10 rushes or more. I look back at Brian Kelly the last 8-9 years at Notre Dame. Last year had whatever the guy's name is, Jack, whatever. He was not a runner. But prior to that, almost every quarterback that Brian Kelly has had has been a running quarterback at Notre Dame. When you go back and you think of Ian Book for 3 years, mobile quarterback who rushes. Brandon Wimbush, the year 2017, had 800 rushing yards and 14 rushing touchdowns. Before that, Deshaun Kaiser. Before that, Everett Golson. Seems like Brian Kelly and Mike Denbrock value mobile quarterbacks. And not to say that Garrett Nussmeier can't use his legs at times, but man, I feel like this is pointing toward a Jayden Daniels start. Where are you on the quarterback for LSU?
I agree. And some of it is Garrett Nussmeier has been dealing with a little bit of an ankle problem, so he hadn't been able to scrimmage. Nuss has been the best thrower of any of the quarterbacks from spring until now.
And we saw that in the spring game.
You saw it in the spring game, and it's just, in general. Look, you made a lot of good points about the dual threat quarterback stuff. And when you go back and look at some of the success Cincinnati had versus Alabama, a lot of it was, this misdirection, RPO, roll out this way, had the tight end go this way. And it was a threat of the run with Desmond Ritter where they had some success. Now, for Jayden, his throwing does need to get better. He did deteriorate as a passer once things started to fall apart at Arizona State. But this is going to be the best set of receivers he had since his true freshman year with Frank Darby and Brandon Ayuk, right? And both of those guys are still in the league. So, I do think it's going to be the Jayden Daniels show versus Florida State. And I think Nuss still has an opportunity to win this job. Now, for me, Gordy, I look at Jayden Daniels, and he could go out there and win LSU 9 games, right? If everything were to work itself out, you could see LSU obviously, take that next step. And you and T-Bob are going to talk more about all the other positions and stuff, but the general public wants to know who the quarterback is going to be. And Jayden Daniels is more than likely going to be the QB1. So we'll see how it works out, but his dual threat abilities certainly helped him win this job.
Got to think an announcement's coming in the next couple of days, though, right? I wouldn't think you would. I mean, are they really going to go up to kickoff against Florida State and be like, we don't know who the quarterback is?
No, but I do think Nuss, and I know this is like time sensitive, I do think the last scrimmage, Nuss not participating in that last scrimmage, I do think just based on what I've heard, LSU is very interested in seeing Nuss scrimmage with this group because what's very interesting is true freshman tight end Mason Taylor is starting to emerge. And a big facet of the Notre Dame and Cincinnati offenses over this past, 4 years at Cincinnati and these past decade at Notre Dame has been the tight end position. And now Mason Taylor is probably the most talented tight end in the room. It wasn't a deep room to begin with. And it does change things up for what LSU wants to do offensively now that they're getting to see Mason Taylor. Is he going to be good? I don't know. I don't think he's going to be Brock Bowers, but I think he's going to be decent as a true freshman if he does end up playing a lot. But we'll see how that looks. And I do think they want to see Nuss, but as of right now, I do think Jayden Daniels is going to be that guy.
He is Carter Bryant. You can follow him on Twitter at Carter the Power. And of course, the show Power Hour LSU on YouTube. Easiest way to find you there, Carter. Thanks so much for the time, man. Always appreciate you stopping by.
We'll talk soon, Gordy.
All right, there he goes. That is Carter Bryant of Power Hour LSU. Appreciate him stopping by. Real quick before we wrap up this segment, the preseason AP poll is out. And just taking a quick look at the teams, not too much difference from the coaches poll we just saw come out a week ago, but we now have the two biggest preseason polls out there. Coaches poll a week ago, now the AP poll out. Alabama preseason number 1, Ohio State number 2, just like a lot of people had, Georgia number 3. And then rounding it out, you got Texas A&M coming in at number 6. And then no SEC teams. You got to go all the way down to number 19, where you find Arkansas, Kentucky coming in at number 20, Ole Miss at number 21. So very similar to the coaches poll, just a couple of spots kind of flip-flop moved around here. But again, no Florida, no Auburn, no LSU. Kind of an unusual thing. We're used to seeing those schools in these rankings. Mississippi State was also getting some votes as well, but that's where we are. It's Alabama, Georgia, A&M, Arkansas, Kentucky, Ole Miss, all in the AP poll, top 25 preseason poll. So that doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot, but it gets people talking, it gets people excited, and certainly got to be excited if you're an Arkansas, Kentucky, or Ole Miss fan, seeing your team ranked in the preseason top 25, higher expectations this year in all of those places. So coming up next, we're going to talk all things LSU, continue our conversation with T-Bob Hebert of 104.5 ESPN in Baton Rouge. We'll also, in segment 2 with T-Bob, get into some bigger picture SEC stuff with him as well. So plenty to discuss here on Locked On SEC you don't want to miss. Thank you guys again for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. First, need to remind you about our friends over at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. You can find all your favorite sports and events and the number one online source for odds, lines, and games. It is BetOnline. Find reviews and news of every league. They got you covered from The NFL, they got tons of preseason game lines. If you're into the making a little interesting bets on that, they got golf, they got combat sports, they got everything. BetOnline continues to be your top online resource for all your sports wagering information. They got tons of college football stuff coming in the next couple of weeks. Everything from Heisman odds, odds to win the conferences. Game lines are coming very soon as well. Head on over to BetOnline today. You can do so on your mobile device. Learn more about all the action happening today. It's BetOnline. It is where the game starts. We're along on the show here, and as we start to look ahead to the college football season, we look ahead to all the different teams playing in the SEC. And one of the teams that, man, it's so funny. People are all over the spectrum on when it comes to the LSU Tigers. You know, are they gonna go 6-6? Are they gonna win 9 games? It's crazy. Everything is all over the place. And join us now to talk a little bit about it is our buddy T-Bob Hebert, former LSU Tiger. He's on 104.5 ESPN in Baton Rouge. T-Bob, what's up?
Chris, what up, dude? Nothing, man. Feeling pretty good. I don't know exactly what's going on. Knock on wood. I have not really been hungover all trip. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I mean, the last 2 nights I've been the last media member in the hotel bar, and we're just gonna try to keep this train rolling, keep this positivity train moving right along.
The good thing is on when you go to SEC media days and things like this, you go from the central to the eastern time zone, so you get an extra hour.
That is well, and it's funny because I'm staying up later, and so I'm not actually sleeping anymore. But it is wild, just mentally, how much of a difference that 8 to 11 compared to 7 to 10 hits.
Let's talk a little bit about it. We heard from Bryant Kelly. We heard from some of the LSU players this week. Just total impression so far of Bryant Kelly and what he's been doing since he's got to Baton Rouge.
I think it's been A+, dude. I mean, I think LSU is very interesting because, as you said, people are all over the spectrum. They don't know exactly what to expect. I do think it's a bit interesting that you have a Texas team that is preseason top 25, and you have a team like USC, which is preseason top 25. And, I'm talking about teams that were bad last year that were given the benefit of the doubt, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, why isn't LSU in there, right? And it's like, oh, they added Lincoln Riley. It's like, hey, well, LSU added the literal winningest active coach in all of college football, right?
Right.
And so, but look, I think there's
an element. The quarterback thing?
Well, so I was going to say that there are question marks, right? The O-line has a lot of experience, but I don't know how talented the O-line's going to be. Even though they have a lot of guys who have been in battles before, you're going to have a freshman left tackle. You don't know who the quarterback's going to be. And also, I think a lot of people were burned by giving LSU the benefit of the doubt the last 2 years, right? Yeah. And it's an old, fool me once, fool me twice, you ain't going to get me again, right? And so I think it's kind of all of these factors. But my biggest takeaway from this week has been that because I never know where my inherent bias begins or ends, right? And so it's tough to try to remain objective, or even when you think you're being objective. And to me, when I hear Clark Lee give the comment he did on Brian Kelly yesterday, where he talks about working for him and how empowered he was as a young coach underneath him, and how much respect he has for him, and how he handles and runs a program. And then I'm talking to David Cutcliffe, and he's talking about how in Brian Kelly, you have someone who is, quite frankly, just the best coach that you've had since Nick Saban, and just a guy who truly knows how to win. And it's like, I don't know what else you will be this year. I'm at 8-4, which is very chalky and boring. But I do know that long term, or I would almost guarantee that LSU is going to be championship relevant year in and year out. I think Brian Kelly is going to be a massive success at LSU.
It is interesting. We talk about all his great teams at Notre Dame, and I always tell people, look, it's not like the guys before him were winning 10 games a year at Notre Dame. He's did something there that a lot of coaches had not done in the history of Notre Dame. So, but he gets a different breed of athlete at LSU. Louisiana it's the premier school of Louisiana. Louisiana cranks out NFL caliber talent every year, and now he gets to keep that talent in state. It does seem like he's going to have a different breed of athlete. And look, you and I went to LSU.
Yeah.
Notre Dame's a little bit stronger academically. The standards are a little bit harder to keep
What?
up. At
No
LSU,
way.
it's, you know.
No. See, now that's my bias. Oh, yes, obviously. Yeah, bro, come on. No one's going to LSU for the academics. The old Cardale Jones line. I came here to play football. I didn't come here to play school, man. But no, yes, yeah. I mean, there's no greater commentary on what you're talking about than just the move that Brian Kelly made. Okay, who knows Notre Dame better than Brian Kelly, right? Not very many human beings on earth know college football better than Brian Kelly. They say actions speak louder than words. He left a playoff adjacent Notre Dame team for a 6-7 LSU team with 39 scholarship players in a conference that features Kirby Smart and Nick Saban.
Yeah.
Like, that tells you everything that he feels about the perceived ceiling at Notre Dame and the perceived potential of LSU. And so I would say that his opinion in that matter carries quite a lot of weight with me. And so, yeah, man, he has everything else. He's got Division II national championships. He's won everywhere he's been. Like I said, winning as active coach. The one thing he does not have in that resume is that national championship. And so this is his kind of push the chips to the center of the table move, like I'm going for it. Left Notre Dame willingly as the winningest coach in their school history.
It's crazy. But look, like you said, he's all in. He's taking a chance, and they paid him well. The money doesn't hurt.
That never hurts. That never hurts. But I mean, but you're gonna get. I mean, yes. Like I do want to be clear about that. Job security, 10 years, $100 million, unbelievable, right? And Scott Woodward but even more than the money, right? Because he was already making great money at Notre Dame and everything, and even more than that. I think it's also Scott Woodward just basically saying, like, look, I will be fully behind you no matter what. And you will have carte blanche to do whatever you need to do. And if you need money, we'll get money, right? That's why they paid Cortez Hankton to bring him back home from Georgia, right? Like Scott Woodward, he wants when you look at how Scott Woodward rolls with his hires, he wants to make sure that they have no excuses from a resources standpoint, right?
Sure.
That like, we will get whatever you need to hire whoever need. You just have to win. And I think when you look at Kelly's resume, I think you do that. So, yeah, the money doesn't hurt at all, certainly.
Continue our conversation with T-Bob Hebert of 104.5 ESPN in Baton Rouge, former LSU Tiger himself. And let's talk a little bit of big picture here, T-Bob, on the SEC. Look, Alabama is the favorite in the West. Georgia's the favorite in the East. It's duh, right? They just play for a championship. They both bring back a ton of talent. Give me a team in the West. If it's not Alabama and Atlanta, who is it?
I mean, so we just talked about this, dude. It's an impossible question. Or it's not an impossible question. We framed it in like, what's more likely to happen? Alabama not winning the West or Georgia not winning the East? And the thing about that is why it's so hard to answer is because it's illogical. Like there's just it would require powers of insight and foresight that we just don't have. Like what narrative can you craft to have Alabama with Bryce Young and Will Anderson losing the SEC West when everybody else has massive question marks? I mean, we know Texas A&M has talent, but they're not sitting on a quarterback. They're placing a huge defensive line. I mean, last year they beat Alabama, went 8-4, so they've given you plenty of reasons to doubt belief in them, right? On the Eastern side of things, yeah, maybe Georgia sub drops a game, but do you think nobody else on that side is not going to drop 2 games? Like it's just
that's the tough part.
I just don't see it, Chris. I mean, I guess if you, it's like the question Kubelik posed that I feel like has been making the rounds. Who's the third best team in the SEC? It's very tough to answer because everybody feels really similar in a lot of ways. So,
who is your third best team?
I bounce back and forth, dude.
I've heard Tennessee, I've heard Kentucky, I've heard Arkansas, I've heard A&M, I've heard Ole Miss.
I would say I lazily just kind of throw A&M out there, and I don't have any great roster reasons why. I mean, look, you know that A&M's recruited very well, so they have a lot of talent, and Jimbo Fisher has won before, right? And regardless of how we want to snipe him here recently, his quarterback track record is pretty unbelievable. Last year was the exception, not the rule, when it comes to quarterback play under Jimbo Fisher.
Right.
So, I mean, if you got talent and you can create a good quarterback, you should be good. So that would still be my third best team, even though I hate answering that. And I would say, I guess, if anybody in the West was going to do it, it would be them. I mean, I really like Arkansas. I just think Arkansas's schedule is absolutely brutal.
Yeah.
I think Ole Miss is interesting in.
We have no idea. They were a wild card. Like,
Yeah.
they have so many transfer portal pieces.
Yes.
It could be a disaster and none of these players work out. It could be, man, they nail it on all of them.
And Lane's won a lot of games lately, dude.
Yes.
I mean, he has proven to be a consistent winner here in his later coaching career. So Ole Miss is probably being undervalued a bit, I would say.
It feels like at times Lane doesn't want to be there and he's sniffing around looking at other jobs. But then when he doesn't get another job, okay, let me just focus on Ole Miss, and then they start winning games. It's like, it's like I kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out the door. But while I'm here, I'm going to focus and win some games.
In the conversation on perceived ceilings, right? It's got to be tough to be the Ole Miss head coach, especially nowadays. Now they do have resources, but I mean, it's tough, man. Imagine being a coach nowadays and you're trying to recruit against the war chest of an Alabama or an A&M or like John Ruiz at Miami and stuff. It's just, you got to feel like you're just at you're at a literal inherent disadvantage. It is not equal.
Let me hit you with a couple quick hitters here. When you were playing, what environment was like the worst road environment you ever played in?
The swamp was awesome. Yeah, man. Because they build it straight up so all that sound stays in and the crowd's right on top of you and they just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk.
What was your record in the swamp?
1-1. My first time there, we got our ass kicked. Like Brandon Spikes punted a ball into the stands after you've had a pick six. And I'll never forget this. Or I guess I did forget it. I got knocked out on a kick return.
Wow.
With 4 minutes left in the game. I don't have a memory until I was sitting on a knee at the 50-yard line with the Florida team.
Wow.
After the game, dude. And I came to and I was like, I gotta go. But then the next time we went, this is probably my favorite win ever in my football playing life. We went into Florida and won on the Terrence Tolliver last second fade touchdown.
That's right,
and the first thing I did was run out to that F and just stomp on it because they had stomped on the Tiger Eye the year before.
One other one for you. If T-Bob was playing today, what NIL deals would you have?
Oh, man, dude. I would have just hoped to get a gaming PC. That's all I would want to. So if like Alienware, Razer, something like that wanted to sponsor me, that would have been my number one goal.
Wow.
Would have been to get a War Machine gaming
I forget how
PC.
nerdy you are sometimes.
Yeah, that would have been my NIL stuff. And then I go with all the old lineman tropes, right? Like, you know, any burger companies, anything like it, barbecue joints, I'd be down for all of that. Tacos.
One more. What's the best thing you've watched recently? Streaming, movie, TV series, whatever.
So Everything Everywhere All at Once. Movie that absolutely blew me away. Now, I had no level of expectation entering it. I just heard somebody told me like it's a good movie, and we were like, oh, it's a good movie time, whatever. It was a top 5 movie of all time.
Is it like Eternal Sunshine, kind of like weird?
It's I don't want to give anything away. So it's kind of like a multiverse film in a lot of way. Multiverse so hot right now, but it's one of those things, one of those pieces of art that is so creative that you almost feel like it's intimidating in its creativity. You're like, how could a human being sit down and write this and then film it and create it? And I know that I will never do anything that'll even sniff a percentage of this greatness. And I laughed, I cried, I laughed. It made some of the most ridiculous settings you can imagine incredibly grounded and heartfelt. Like it really connected to me.
Quite an endorsement of that movie. Now I'm gonna have to go home and watch that. He is the great T-Bob Hebert, 104.5 ESPN in Baton Rouge. T-Bob, thanks for the time, man.
All right, Chris, take it easy, man. Have a good day.
All right, we'll be back more after this. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. Again, today was our LSU-focused, centric show, and rightfully so, kind of worked in with all the quarterback news coming out of Baton Rouge. But coming up in the next couple of days, we're going to continue to go around the conference. We're going to preview Kentucky later this week. We're going to preview Tennessee. We're going to preview Georgia with West Blankenship. So we got a ton of stuff coming the rest of this week, getting into previewing some more of the teams as we start to get you ready for the start of the SEC season. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. Now go make your second listen. Check out some of our other great podcasts. Whoever you're a fan of in the SEC, we got you covered. Just search Locked On and that school's name, and you'll find the school that you were looking for wherever you get your podcast. I'm Chris Gordy. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Back here 5 days a week, talking all things SEC football. Talk to you guys tomorrow.